Thank you for joining us for 10 Minutes with the Artist, an episodic series that explores the art practice and the personal vision that guides artists. On today's episode, we're very proud to have Thomas Rhone, who is completing his Master's in Architecture at North Dakota State University. We invited him here today to speak about his research as well as the creation of artifacts in preparation of his defense. Thomas's work examines montage as a way to link stories over time and space. His film is a labyrinth exploring St. Anthony Falls history. His pre-production, filming, and post-production all aim to transcend a passive viewing experience that engages the mind, body, and reality of the viewer. I'm Anthony Ferris, and this is 10 Minutes with the Artist. So thank you so very much, Tom, for joining us today on 10 Minutes with the Artist. So you've created a film that explores montage, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you've done.
I guess I've attempted to make a film that is connecting architecture and film together and looking at the process of both of them and trying to find, I guess, similarities between the two. So I guess in a simple way, the main technique that I was using is, like you said, montage. And for both architecture and film, I see it as a way to piece together the world that you're building, I guess, in either the architectural world or the filmic world, which is, I guess, what we're talking about, which is what I created.
Okay, so both, film can exist without architecture. I don't know if that's true. I'm just making a bold statement here. And architecture can exist without film, maybe. Mm-hmm. So what is that relationship that they have?
I guess I've had a passion for both. Film is something I've always been very interested in, and architecture is something that I kind of learned to really like through studying it. And I guess the relationship that I found over time was kind of an organic one, and in the end, it came down to this ability for both of them to create worlds, I guess, something new, something that didn't exist before.
Okay. Do you feel like going into a theater is the same way as going into a church or a courthouse or a house, that you're transported somewhere else? And if so, how does it happen?
I guess I would say it's different. I think a theater, especially like a cinema to watch film, there's a very specific order of events that you go through to get to your final seat, and there's a lot of deprivation that goes on of light and sound and your surroundings, and by the time you get to your seat in a theater, pretty much everything is gone from your reality, and there's a new one that's put in front of you. Where with if you're going into a church, what is inside will always be the same, I guess. Whereas with film, you're having one experience. You could have the same experience walking into the theater over and over again, but once you sit in your seat, you could be in a completely different place.
Okay. So when you were making this film, were you sort of inspired, sort of like art for art's sake, were you inspired a lot by that sort of process of navigating a theater? Is your architecture inspired by that sort of path that you have to take in a film?
I guess that's one thing that I played with a lot, is the idea of time, and film is able to kind of distort time and reality. You can film, I guess the whole idea of montage is, you can film a wall here and one time and film a wall here and another time, and then the act of editing them together in the film makes a continuity. And I think that's kind of where the idea of like building comes in, and where I was trying to go with like building this world.
Okay. Yeah, the look and feel of the of your film, it almost has like sort of like a film noir kind of feel. I was wondering what sort of mood you were going for.
Yeah, it was. I think that all came from the story that I was trying to tell, and it was all inspired by the site that this film is trying to be inspired from. So the location is the St. Anthony Falls area in Minneapolis, where it started as a huge sawmilling industry, and then it developed later into flour milling. And I guess I was trying to find a connection or show a connection between the way that people were treated at the time when they were working in the sawmills, which was not very good, and then the way that the materials of the materials which were, trees were not treated well either. They just cut all of them down. And I guess some of the visuals that you see in the film are like severed limbs, which would be limbs of like people and limbs of trees. And I guess that was one thing I was trying to, draw a connection between. And I guess it is kind of a grisly visual, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, I guess. I don't know where I'm going right now.
No, that's great. That's great. We're seeing all those different visuals sort of like overlapped. It made me think about sort of like the parts to the whole feeling of architecture. When you're like looking at architecture, do you look at it as parts to a whole, like the different parts that are sort of made up to make it, or do you look at it as a whole?
I guess it is important to look at it both ways, but I really enjoy looking at it as from the individual parts. And that's kind of the way that I went about with making the film is, you have to, build each individual set and each individual shot, set up each individual shot, and in the end it becomes a whole. But, starting you need to have that big picture, I guess. But then you have to be able to, focus in on, this one image that you need to put together for this one, quick moment. And I guess that definitely relates to what I'm trying to do now with the, the final architecture. But that's really interesting. I've never really thought of that.
Well, I don't know if this will be sort of an elaboration on that, but, film is something that's constantly moving, and you are going from one place to the other, and you're able to share so many different stories. But then I think a lot of people think of architecture as static, just one space. So when you're creating something, or you're creating this film, or you're creating an architectural model, what's that relationship between that movement and that stillness?
I think one interesting thing, film can make you feel like you're moving or things like that through different techniques, but I think architecture is able to make you feel those same types of things through the spaces that, you can design, I guess. When you're entering a space, you see even if you're not touching like a wall, when you see the wall, you think about that, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's what I'm trying to say. It's like, if there's a space where the ceiling is, it's this narrow space where the ceiling is far above you, you can almost feel like lifted up or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, at the end of our interviews, we like to ask a few questions about sort of your creative process. So what time of the day do you feel like you're most creative?
I guess it's not necessarily a time of the day. It's like a situation. It's usually when I'm in like conversation with other people, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about anything in particular to what I'm trying to work on, but when I'm either listening to other people speak to each other. When I'm in a group of people, I tend to be able to kind of process my own ideas, like internally
Yeah.
when that's happening.
Okay. Do you listen to any sort of music or anything like that when you're editing or?
Yeah, that definitely, I think, can affect, the outcome, which you have to be careful about. But yes, yeah.
Like, what do you listen to?
Well, recently I've been working on this, the second iteration of this film, which is the representation of my final architecture, and I've been listening to The Knife, which is kind of like they're a Swedish kind of avant-garde pop group. They're pretty fun to listen to, and you can listen to them without really a lot of effort, I guess. It can just play in the background and be fun, I guess.
Okay.
So,
is there anything that you're reading right now?
I guess I'm constantly reading. Well, I was gonna say I was reading all these architecture and film books, but I'll maybe pick something a little bit more interesting.
No, you can just. I find it really interesting how people are inspired and what is sort of like, rolling around in their mind because you just read something that you
Sure.
thought was really.
I guess one of the books I just picked up in Minneapolis when I was there a few weeks ago is called Zot, I think, with an exclamation point, and it's by this comic book writer, Scott McCloud. He is a filmmaker he is a comic book writer, and this is one of his earlier works that he did, and I also see a connection between film architecture and the art of like comic books.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I enjoy reading as well.
Yeah. And then maybe the last question would be, what's next?
I guess now I'm making my second film, which is hopefully going to be a story which is my architecture. It's the experience of the film, the experience of the architecture that I'm going to be, which I have designed, I guess.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Tom. So I'd like to thank our guest, and I'd also like to thank you all for your time, as well as your interest in the professional practice and the creative explorations happening here at North Dakota State University. So thank you very much, and for everyone here at the Memorial Union, keep creative.